They buried Lord Purrington in the stone crypt beside his father. Who was next to his father? Who was next to his father? Which went on for hundreds of tombstones. Brandon's first decree as Lord was that every man buried in the crypt would have every one of their acts of valor carved in stone over their grave, in order for them to live on long after they died. It would take the craftsmen months to finish their father's gravestone. Joshua's hand throbbed. The blacksmiths had made him a shorter sword, one that was easier to wield one-handed. "What am I, from Linding?" he half-joked. But another man who could no longer use a two-handed sword had taken to training with him. Hard Al taunted him. "Come on now, you still sucking milk? Stop fighting like a baby." He didn't need Al's taunting to flare up. He was already angry. Angry that his lord father was dead. Angry at his lord brother for not wanting revenge for their father. Angry that his hand wouldn't stop hurting. Angry that the sun was in his eyes. Angry that he couldn't swing this stupid sword right. And so Joshua beat Hard Al senseless with his sword. Hard Al must have truly been senseless, because no matter how bad of a beating he took, he seemed to be completely unaffected. Josh envied that. He routinely bumped his bad hand into nearly everything. The edge of a table, on a door as he was leaving, on his bed when he went to sleep, and anything that seemed to have a corner. And it always hurt. A constant ache, with a pain that shot up his forearm every once in a short while. Training had taken much from him. Such rigorous exercise forced blood into his hand, which his uncle said was good, but it didn't feel good. The ravens were cawing overhead as he walked towards the stone crypt, a mountain cave that had been dug out. It had 2 stone ravens who sat staring at the entrance hole, watching over the dead. Or to make sure none left, was the legend some elders had told them as kids to scare them. Crypt keepers were carrying another body to be buried, likely another succumbing to a festering wound. That had become a routine, seeing bodies carried to the crypt. The sight of another one made him turn. Uncle Eldon was doing his best, but more and more people kept dying. And what would they have died for? For nothing? He had to convince his lord brother to act, to fight, to not let those who died die in vain. But Brandon no longer feared him. Any power he had was cut away along with his finger. His hand throbbed. But there were other ways of convincing people, though he hadn't been accustomed to using those methods. Josh went to the meeting in the long hall that night and sat in silence. He sat staring at the torch flames flickering on the wall. His Uncle Eldon and the Master-at-Arms Teddy Brown were talking to their new lord, who was sitting on the stone throne. Josh would glance over at his lord brother every few moments, but he never seemed to look back. Teddy Brown spoke up. "The guards were sent to Gildencourt in an old Horgrave, but there was a raid in Timberbank. Men of Wolfsweald, another assault. No word of how many casualties, my lord." "I must find out why they are attacking us," said Brandon, sitting upright on the throne, clasping his hands around the stone armrests. "There must be a way to solve this." Josh wanted to say, "The way to solve this is to kill all of them," but he kept silent, hoping to use tenderness and reason to coerce his lord brother. Brandon never was one to listen to reason, though. When they were children, Josh and Brandon were both standing at the edge of a short cliff, and the other side was at least 3 yards away. Josh assured his brother that jumping across would be impossible, but he tried anyway, and Uncle Eldon had to stitch his knee shut. Brandon's knee had been a weak spot for him ever since, a token of what had happened when he ignored his brother Josh. His refusal to hold a sword right, regardless of how many times he was corrected, grated against Josh like someone was scraping his bare knuckles across gravel. Josh had sculpted a castle of clay once, and he was very proud. "Look at the merlins and ramparts. The curtain wall is good, I think. And the portcullis and barbican, now that took a while." Before any of his other brothers had gotten to see it, Brandon had knocked it over. Josh was upset, and Brandon was mad that he was upset. "Well, you don't have to make me feel bad," was what he had said. Josh's hopes of using reason dwindled like the torch on the wall that had burned up the last of its fuel. "Any word of happenings north? Has this demon been seen?" The demon. The thing that had killed his father and many others, and that cut Hard Owl's arm off. Anytime he was asked, Hard Owl would say, "It was 8 feet tall, and its horns curled around its head like a ram, and it rode a big ram, big as a house. It wore a full plate, and smoke came out of its mouth." Nobody believed him until they had heard that it had killed Lord Purrington. "No, my lord," said Teddy Brown. "We have sent no more troops north. The northern towns have not sent word, but I believe bolstering their defenses would be wise." "I agree. We need to avoid this demon at all costs. It has taken enough from us," said Brandon. "And let it get away with killing our father?" snapped Josh. He almost surprised himself, but the thought of letting the thing that killed his father live lit his fire again. So much for reason. Shouting was what he was good at, so it was what he was going to do. "I won't stand for this. Our valor is our shield, and we will have none if we let our enemies trample us." "Yes, Josh. The old Purrington words. That's fantastic. And who's going to go and fight it? You, my gimpy brother with your new stubby sword? What, do you expect me to empty the infirmary? Tell the scribes to record that on Lord Brandon's first day as Lord, he sent a horde of cripples to fight. Did part of your brain come off with that finger of yours?" Josh did not know how to respond to that. He knew how he wanted to respond. "At least I'm not a coward who's willing to let people be killed for nothing." The way he was mocked made him angry, and his hand throbbed. But he knew that if he said anything more, it would only make Brandon less likely to listen to him. Avenging his father and his people were more important than his feelings. A voice echoed from down the long hall. "I'll go." Walking down the blue carpet of the long hall was Jordan, his bastard brother, wearing his armor and holding his longsword. Behind him were 10 men, armed and armored. He held his sword in front of his face and knelt before the stone throne. "I will wield this sword with retribution for my father and my lord. I swear to you, Lord Brandon, I will kill this demon, or I will die trying." Welcome to the Storytime Saturday podcast. I'm your host, TGD. This week we check back in with Josh in Lark's Vale, and he's arguing with Brandon again. So as always, we'll start with the writing aspect of this chapter. This is the shortest chapter yet, I'm pretty sure. This is the shortest chapter yet at 1,200 words. This chapter is 1,200 words, and in my opinion, that's a little bit too short. As I was reading, I was sort of just getting into the dialogue. As I was reading it, I'm like, okay, let's see what happens next. And then the chapter ends. So, when I was writing this, I was probably ahead in my word count quota for NaNoWriMo. So that's why it ended so fast. The tournament chapters that are like 6,000 words, they really padded the word count, so this is a shorter chapter this week. Now, one more thing about the writing. It says, he sat staring at the torch flames flickering on the wall. That's kind of random. That's kind of random. A lot of the characters in this book like watching the fire flicker. They're looking at candles and the torches. So everyone likes looking at fire for some reason. There was a bit of a callback to this later on, when it says that Josh's hopes of using reason dwindled like the torch on the wall that had burned up the last of its fuel. So I guess talking about the torch makes sense, but it is kind of random. So let's talk about the characters. Let's talk about the character aspects this week. Now, of course, a reminder, disclaimer as always, this is a work of fiction and in no way reflective of reality. So, starting with Josh, it's kind of funny that he gets his finger cut off, and he's training with and losing to a guy that only has one arm. So Josh's minor injury on getting his finger cut off affects him more than a guy who had his entire arm cut off. So that might be part of that might be mental. Hard Al has a much higher like mental fortitude that he's letting it affect him less than Josh is. We see part of Josh's motivation again. He wants the deaths of his people to mean something. That them dying actually purchased something. That it was for a reason. That their deaths accomplished something for those that were left behind. And Josh's life was spent using his usual method of persuasion, which was intimidation. And he mulls over trying to reason with Brandon since he muses that all of his intimidation power was cut off along with his finger. So he thinks about using reason and tenderness, but that goes out the window. He ultimately never even tries. We do learn some stuff, though. We get little hints where that might let us relate to Josh a little bit. We see his lifelong exasperation with Brandon, and we get clues that, okay, so Josh's attitude toward Brandon is the result of years and years and years of frustration from Brandon. Let's talk about Brandon actually right now. So Brandon's the Lord of Larksvale now, and we see in Josh's flashback that Brandon is clumsy and impulsive, and he has been for his entire life. From trying to jump over a chasm and smashing his knee open even when Josh told him not to every time he's corrected, he holds the sword the wrong way and knocking over, accidentally of course, but knocking over Josh's sculpture and only feeling bad for himself when he knocks it over. So we're crossing the threshold. These ships are starting to pass. I've mentioned before in the Brandon and Josh chapters that they're doing like a face-heel swap. And we're approaching that now. They're approaching each other, and they're almost at the point where they're going to pass each other. So we're getting a little bit more sympathy from Josh, and we're seeing Brandon, like, I guess some readers might view it differently. Some readers might see Brandon, his remark say, "Who's gonna go fight the demon, Josh? You, my gimpy brother with your new stubby sword?" So some people might be saying, "Oh, nice, he's sticking up for himself." And other people might be like, "Ooh, wow, that's a little too far." So I like stuff like that. I like stuff where it's left up to the reader to really decide, like it's not being force-fed to the reader, like this guy's evil or this guy's good. Now last, I want to talk about Jordan. Jordan's really the only other major character in this short chapter. And he gets a pretty BA moment here. He gets a BA moment. So Brandon refuses to fight. He's like, we're not going to advance on any fronts. We're not going to throw people at this problem. We're just going to try to guard the towns. We're not going to attack. We're not going to be aggressive. Josh wants to send men out. He wants to do the opposite. He wants to send men out in an attack to retaliate and let them know that this is not okay to do this to us. Jordan, he's actually decided to volunteer himself. He's like, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait for everyone else to make a decision. I'm volunteering. I'm going to go hunt this demon. And then the chapter ends. We don't actually get to see Josh's response to that. So that'll be interesting in the upcoming chapters. Just a note, as you know, this was called by someone, apparently, just a Game of Thrones fan fiction, and Brandon sits on the stone throne. So you might have noticed that up to now, everyone has their own sort of special throne. In Linwood, they have the Ashwood throne, and Lady Alice has a golden throne. In Larksvale, they have the stone throne. Let's just tell the truth, okay? No throne is as cool as the Iron Throne. The 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. But I wanted each kingdom to have its own unique throne. And yeah, that is a bit derivative. Everyone, even in Game of Thrones, they all have like their own unique throne. They have there's the sea stone chair and the whatever. So next week we're gonna see Gerald. Gerald is finally getting over the endless mountains, and he's going into Gardenfell. So we've seen Edward Guevara from Gardenfell, and we'll get to see a little bit more of the culture if you've been looking forward to seeing the culture of Gardenfell. But that's next week. This was probably the shortest episode so far, and that's fine. They don't all need to be long. They don't all need to be a half hour or an hour long. We'll just talk about what we feel like talking about, you know? So this has been the Storytime Saturday podcast. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, make sure you're subscribed. If you're listening anywhere else, make sure you follow me there. Make sure you go subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Underscore Chalice YouTube channel. We do gaming videos, we do miscellaneous videos, we always have fun. Well, not always have fun, but we have fun as much as we can. So I'll see you next week on the Storytime Saturday podcast. Thanks for joining.